In this video, I shall discuss about Buddhism and Jainism, and the discussion shall be organized like this. Firstly, the religious ideas, then the different sects and schisms within the religion, then the different religious texts, then other factors such as the rise of the religion, the decline, their effects on the society, their art and architecture, the important people associated, royal patronage, and comparison. So lots of aspects in a very summarized form. So let's begin with Buddhism. Buddhism believes in four noble truths, that is, dukkha, the world is full of sorrows; trishna, the cause of this sorrow is desire; then the fact that if you conquer these desires, the sorrow will be removed; and the fourth, the way to conquer these desires is by following the eightfold path, or the Ashtanga Marg, or the middle path. So what is it? It is logically arranged. First, you must have a right thought. Then you must aim right, you must speak right, you must act correctly, you must have a proper livelihood, you must have the right effort, create the right awareness, and have the right meditation. So very logically arranged. So you can understand that Buddhism believes in causality, in a proper arrangement of cause and effect, that causes precede effects. And this is called pratitya samutpada. That if you do good karma, you will ultimately have nirvana, and you will be able to come out of this cycle of birth and death called samsara. So these are the concepts which Buddhism believes in. Also, there are the three terms called dukkha, anitya, anatma. Dukkha means sorrow, of course. Anitya means that everything is impermanent in the world, and anatma means there is no soul. Buddhism does not believe in any soul. It believes in rebirth, but without transmigration of the soul. Both Hinduism and Jainism believe in soul and rebirth as a result of the transmigration of soul. Buddhism believes that the rebirth happens without a soul. Okay. Now let's go for the different sects and schisms in Buddhism. Fourth Buddhist Council happened during the time of Kanishk in Kashmir, and before that there was this minor schism developing within the Buddhists, that is Sthaviravadins or Theravadins on one side and Mahasangikas on the other side. Whereas Sthaviravadins believed that the Arhat, or the individual saint who is living his life here on earth, can lead you to salvation, the Mahasangikas believed that there is the supramundane, supernatural Bodhisattva which can help you. And the Sthaviravadins had a number of sects within them, one of them being Sarvastivadin, which believed in Sabbamati, that is, everything exists. And Mahasangikas had a number of sects, one of them being Lokottars, which means the supramundane Buddha, which you can understand. And they, later on, after the Fourth Buddhist Council, developed into a major schism. The Sthaviravadins led to the Hinayana Buddhists, and the Mahasangikas led to the Mahayana Buddhists. The Mahayana Buddhists had a preponderance in the northern northwestern part of India, whereas in the southern part you had Hinayans. Okay, so let's discuss the differences between them. Hinayans did not believe in idol worship and deification of the Buddha, whereas Mahayana believed in such a godly Buddha. And during this period of Kanishka, you find a number of sculptures being formed in different schools, such as the Gandhara school, Mathura school, Amravati school, and sculptures were formed as a part of the Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism preached the interpreted teachings of Buddha in Sanskrit, whereas Hinayans taught the original teachings in Pali language, and the Hinayans believed in the individual salvation through Arhats and Mahayans through Bodhisattvas. And as far as the religious texts are concerned, for Hinayans it was Tripitakas, the three Pitakas, which I shall discuss, and for Mahayans they were the Sutras. Furthermore, within the Mahayana, there were two important schools. One was the Madhyamik or Shunyavad school of Nagarjuna, another one was the Vigyanvad or the Yogachar school of Maitreya Nath, Asanga and Vasubandhu. So Nagarjuna wrote this book called Mool Madhyamik Karika, that is the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, in which he said that there is Shunyavad or emptiness in this entire world. So everything that you actually perceive is nothing but an illusion. And it's very easy to fall into this trap. In order to prevent that, you should follow this middle path of Madhyamik. That's the basic idea. in Vigyanvad or yoga, they said that reality only exists in the mind of the perceiver. Whatever you perceive is the reality. If you close your eyes and perceive something high, something different, that becomes a reality. Okay? So for that you need to do yoga. So this was a yogic tendency. And later on, after the 5th century AD, Mahayana Buddhism developed or evolved into Vajrayana Buddhism in the eastern part of India, especially under the Pala rulers. And in this Vajrayana Buddhism, they believed in yoga, in various mudras, in mantras, in Vajra, that is thunder. So a lot of magical, superstitious tendencies. And they believed that there was this Adi Buddha, which delegated his task to the Dhyani Buddhas, who did his work through the Bodhisattvas, who finally did his work through the Manjushri Buddhas or the model Buddhas, and Gautam Buddha being one of them. And with the increasing preponderance of the female principle, each of the Dhyani Buddhas and Bodhisattvas were given a female consort. Some of the famous Bodhisattvas were Amitabha, Avalokiteshwar, or Padmapani, which is also painted in the cave number 1 of Ajanta caves, and also a subject of the book Lokeshwarshatak by the famous Pala era poet Vajradatta. Then you have other Bodhisattvas such as Manjushri, Vairochana, Samantabhadra or Chakrapani, and the ferocious form Vajrapani. So, and there were some famous texts of the Vajrayanas such as Manjushri Mulkalpa and Guhaya Samaj. And now let me go to the different religious texts of Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhists as well. So, there are 3 categories. One is the Pali canonical text, one is the Pali non-canonical text, both are in Pali language, and therefore both are for Hinayana Buddhists. And then you have Sanskrit texts for Mahayana Buddhists. So, Pali canonical texts are the 3 Pitakas. First, the Vinaya Pitaka, rules for a monastic life for the Buddhists. Then you have the Sutta Pitaka, philosophical teachings and aphorisms, and the Abhidhamma Pitaka, same as Sutta Pitaka but more philosophical. Pali non-canonical, also Hinayana but having Mahayanic tendencies. They are standalone books such as the Milinda Pano, which discusses the discussion between King Menander and the famous Buddhist sage Nagasen. Then you have Lalita Vistara, which is an anonymous biography of Lord Buddha. Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa. Dipa means island, and these are the foundation texts of the Theravada Buddhism, which is there in Sri Lanka today. Then I come to the Sanskrit texts of Mahayana, which are organized in sutras. These are the important sutras. First of all, Prajnaparamitas. Now, in this thing, it believes in Shunyavada of Nagarjuna, that the present world is emptiness, and in future you'll have a perfect world called Prajna, in which people with perfections or paramitas would be there, and that's what it discusses about. Then you have within this sutra some smaller sutras like the Heart Sutra, the Diamond Sutra, etc. Then you have Saddharma Pandarika. Pandarika means lotus, so this is the Lotus Sutra. Avantasak. Avantasak means garland. This is a Garland Sutra. That means it is based on the causation principle of the Buddhists, that there is an orderly cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. You understand? So it forms a garland sort of thing. And moreover, you have this concept of parinama, that is transference of merit. That is, the Bodhisattva can transfer his merit or good qualities to his disciples. Then you also have Nagarjuna's Mool Madhyamik Karik, which I have discussed, and Ashwaghosh wrote Buddha Charita and Shraddhotpad. So these are the important religious texts which have been discussed. Okay, now let's discuss why Buddhism became famous. Buddhism became famous because of its simplicity. No great rituals and Sanskrit and all that. Pali language, rejection of the Vedas and the Varna system. Women were also admitted into the Buddhist Sanghas, and royal patronage was received on unprecedented levels. So, the decline of Buddhism happened when a lot of these aspects were divorced. For example, when the simplicity and the Pali language became complexity and the Sanskrit language in Mahayana times, then Buddhism started to decline. And when superstitions and magic and bad practices of some sorts were started during the Vajrayana phase, in the tantric phase, then there was some disillusionment. And with the decline of Brahmanism and rise of Bhagavatism, especially during and after the time of Adi Shankaracharya, Buddhism declined. Moreover, idol worship was one of the reasons for the decline. Then the Huns and the Turkish people attacked the Indian subcontinent. So all of these things were there. Then the effects of Buddhism on the society is that it influenced the society in tremendous number of ways. In terms of Hinduism, you can understand that Mahayana Buddhism influenced various Upanishads and also the thoughts of Adi Shankaracharya. Adi Shankaracharya is called by some thinkers as Crypto-Buddhist because of similarities in thoughts. Vajrayana Buddhism influenced the Shaktism or the Shakta or Tantric trend in Hinduism at that time. And you can understand that the ferocious forms of Matarani have some similarity with Vajrapani and the ideas of Vajrayana Buddhism. And there is a separate video on Adi Shakti Mata and its different forms on News and Statics, which you can check out. The concept of ahimsa was somewhat strengthened by Buddhism. Then art and architecture is something I shall discuss separately, which had a huge effect on the society. Local language was strengthened because they started with the Pali language and not the Sanskrit. And then the Indian culture spread to other countries. Women were given dignity, dogmatism was decreased, and reason and logic was given strength. Now, if you talk about the royal patrons, I discussed that royal patronage was one of the reasons for the rise of Buddhism. King Ashoka gave royal patronage at an unprecedented level. It set the precedent for many kings such as Kanishk, Menander, Harshavardhan, and then the Pala rulers. And then they built all those Mahaviharas and rock-cut architecture. They gave patronage and it spread abroad. No other religion has got such a large scale of patronage. And when I discuss Jainism, you'll understand that patronage was there but not at this level. So King Ashoka set a very strong precedent. Okay, now let's discuss the last point, that is Buddhist art and architecture. I have discussed about the three schools and not in detail. There shall be another video on the details of the three sculpture schools of Mahayana Buddhism, that is Gandhara, Mathura and Amravati schools. A lot of stupas were made, which are mound-like structures with Buddhist relics. Famous one being at Sanchi, then the Dhamek Stupa in Sarnath, Shanti Stupa in Leh, Dharmarajika Stupa in Taxila, Bharut Stupa in MP, and Amravati Stupa. Chaityas were prayer halls because Buddhists did not pray in temples as such, but in prayer halls, something similar to the churches of Christians. And in viharas, viharas were there, Chaityas were there and viharas were like hostels. And later on, these viharas and chaityas were made standalone. And viharas also started to have attached libraries, attached classrooms, and they became universities like the Mahaviharas of Nalanda. Then you have a number of Mahaviharas made during the Pala time, such as the Odantapuri, Somapuri, Vikramshil. And initially it was all rock cut through caves. For example, the Kanheri caves of Mumbai, the Karla and the Bhaja caves in the Bhorghat region between Mumbai and Pune. And the Karla caves have the largest chaityas that exist. Nasik caves, Bak caves, the Ajanta and Ellora caves, the Odisha triangle of Lalitagiri, Ratnagiri and Udaygiri. So these are important, and it is these rock-cut architecture which also inspired the rock-cut architecture in Hinduism and Jainism. We find a lot of them in the Ellora caves, the Kailashnath temple, which is a Hindu temple. So the rock-cut architecture in Indian subcontinent was vastly influenced by Buddhism. And I think I have discussed most of the things. In terms of paintings, the mural Buddhist paintings in Ajanta and Ellora caves and also in Bak caves is worth seeing. And it is also of great historical significance. So I have discussed most of the points that there can be in Buddhism. I shall now go straight away to Jainism in the next part.